Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Theory. In this interview, we have Lisa from Arkansas, and she wants to report some encounters that happened in the past on her family property. Lisa has also had some strange experiences herself while camping out in the brush. The Ozark Mountains has a long history of strange reports, and many people are not willing to speak about what they encountered, and unfortunately, many reports never make it to the public. You will often hear people say things like, "There is not enough woods out there for a creature like this to exist. How come there has never been a photo taken of one? Why do people never find their bones? And why does the government not tell us about them if they are real?" These are comments made by people who are highly skeptical and people who put zero thought into the subject. It's okay if you don't believe, and it's okay if you don't know these creatures exist. No one is mad at you, but please be sure to remain open-minded, as there are many things in the universe that we don't know about. If you guys enjoy Sasquatch Theory, please like and subscribe to the channel, and if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Alright guys, with all that being said, let's dive into our next Bigfoot interview here on Sasquatch Theory. All right, Lisa, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
Oh, doing pretty well. And yourself?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much for asking. Lisa, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Okay. I was born in Kansas City, but moved to Newton County, Arkansas, whenever I was 4 years old. And at that time, we lived in a two-room cabin with no electricity and no running water up uh, in a pretty remote area. And it was my grandfather's homestead. And my grandfather um, told us a story about his encounter with a creature. And so this sort of sparked my interest in the whole thing. Um, he was coming home from a neighbor's house and he was riding his mule. And he was, the neighbor's house was up on the ridge. And so he had to ride sort of down the holler onto the next bench, which is where his property was. And he had a smokehouse and a pig pen and stuff built kind of up the hill from the house. So when they were trying to pass that way, his mule wouldn't go. Like it started freaking out, didn't want to go any further forward, didn't want to go any further forward. And he, I guess, had trouble with it and then finally got it to kind of point in the right direction and go again. And it was then that he saw coming out of his smokehouse what he thought was a man. And then as it moved away, he saw that the man had a sack over its back and realized at around the same time that it was not a man. He said that it was about 6 feet tall and had reddish brown fur and had a sack over its back. And um, so he went down to the house and like stayed in for the rest of the night. And the next morning he went up there and the door had been pulled off the hinges and there was a bunch of smoked pork taken from the smokehouse. And I fully believe him. You know, he wasn't the type of person to make anything like that up. And that would have happened around, oh, he was born in 1900, and my dad was born in 29. It probably would have been in the 30s, the 1930s, that happened to him.
Did he describe the features on this 6 foot reddish brown creature?
The detail that I gave you just there is the only thing that I can fully recall having heard myself.
Mm,
I don't remember him talking about a face or anything else, just that it looked like a man, except it was a man covered in fur. And he also, the size, he said it wasn't a big thing. And that makes me think he had heard other people talking about it, that it was man sized.
yeah, yeah, it sounds like Sasquatch to me. And what
Yeah.
What else happened after that?
Um, I don't really have any any further, stories from him,
Mhm.
but when you grow up and you hear that, and I do believe him, and so do my brothers and sisters, and they're a lot older than me. I was kind of a really, really late life baby, and so they knew him, into their early adulthood, where I just knew him when I was a kid, and they believe him too, 100%.
Yeah, and they think this reddish brown man pulled the hinges or the door off the hinges and took the smoked pork. Is that correct?
I guess my brother told me that he had leather hinges on the door and one of those little strings that you pull to open the door, old style, homemade kind of stuff, and that it had been ripped off the building.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people mention to me to go out in these areas and cook up bacon or sausage, and that will draw them in.
Or a bear or a pig or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Well, so then we lived there. I lived there until I was 14 and was very much a child of the woods, and my books and running around outside were my things that I did. And I always felt very safe and secure. I never felt scared in the woods there. Not a bit. Not a bit. Um, but then later, okay, it would have been around, it would have been 1992 or so. So jumping forward, I uh, I came to visit my family in Newton County because I had moved away at that time, and I heard a blood curdling story that one of the neighbors of my sister, it was a very laconic man, very introverted kind of guy, real quiet, but a very, very serious person. He didn't talk a lot. When he did talk, it was usually something important and well worth listening to, the kind of guy I'm talking about. And he came down to my sister's house and asked to talk to her husband and shooed the kids out of the room. And the kids, of course, went outside around the house in through the back door and then came in and listened behind the kitchen door because he was freaked out. Like he came in and he was freaked out. So they heard him tell that he had had a stillborn calf the day before and he had put it on the like a trash pile out back of the barn. And the next morning he went out, he got up to go and take care of it and dispose of it. And he surprised like an 8 foot tall Bigfoot handling that calf. And he said it slung it over its neck like a shepherd, like a shepherd with a lamb, and speedily made its way off.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So
Is this the same area?
it is maybe as the crow flies 10 miles away.
Okay, so that's fairly close.
Yeah. And it's also in the Little Buffalo River bottoms, which I think would probably be a pretty good highway for those guys. It's wooded the whole way, except where there's bluffs here and there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrifying right there. Did
Hmm.
did he have any intentions on following the creature, or did he just stand there and watch it go off into the woods?
Um, from the story that I told, he was just so gobsmacked and flabbergasted that he just watched it, walked away, and went and got in his truck and went up to my sister's house.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
And those guys around there, like, when you live in a real really rural area, everybody needs help, everybody helps each other, if you have projects and stuff. And that was very much the case between those two men. They were, I guess, almost on a daily basis they would see each other, but his arrival in the house really got the kids interest up. They were like, what the heck has happened? So they hid out and listened to it.
Yeah.
They said he sounded scared to death, that he was white as a sheet.
And this is a no nonsense guy that doesn't make things up.
No, and not only that, a big, strong, self-sufficient farmer guy. Like he was probably 6'4", really big, built like a fire plug. He wasn't scared of anything. And they said that that's why they were so spooked and wondered what was going on because of the way he looked when he came in.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And I can only
hmm
imagine the fear that he felt when he laid eyes on that creature.
the fact that in both of these, stories that I've heard, the fact that kind of freaks me out is if everybody has sort of this ape theory or whatever it is. What ape would think of bringing a sack and putting their stuff in it, And the whole thing about slinging the other one about slinging the calf around its shoulders like that. I mean, it just seems so human-like to me.
Yeah, it does. I've heard encounters from, I mean, not personally, but from the Native Americans where they have a basket and they'll put children in the basket and take them away.
Oh my word.
Hmm.
See, that's just crazy, But well, anyway, that guy too, if he said it, he'd be the last person I would think would ever come up with anything to try to make fun or play a prank or whatever. He was just a quiet, introverted, very, very strong presence kind of person.
Yeah, I can only imagine that the encounter really changed him.
I, to me, if I had to put myself in his shoes, it would just rock my world. He grew up there his whole life. He knows all of the wildlife. He's a hunter, you know, works his own land. He's outside all day, every day. You know, he must have just been in total shock when he saw that. It's like a reality check, really, that you think but you don't.
Yeah, I know the same type of people that have had encounters in Missouri, and it really kept them out of the woods. They don't go in when it's dark, and they come out before it gets dark when they're hunting or just out in the woods in general, or even taking out the
Right?
trash at nighttime.
No, I can totally understand it. Totally. Yeah.
Okay, so what
I'm
else
trying to
happened
think.
after this?
Okay, now bringing this forward several years, this happened. The incident I'm about to tell you about happened not last fall, but the fall before. So that would be what, 2022, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And up near that cemetery that I told you about before, and if you don't mind, I'll refrain from saying the name of that cemetery. My nephew, who is a carpenter, had been hired to live in and remodel a house up there. And when you drive down this little dirt road, the house can see the dirt road and the pastures across the dirt road that sort of rise uphill from the dirt road, and the house is sort of downhill from the dirt road. He had been hearing strange things at night, but didn't really. He just said he heard stuff that kind of sounded like wolves, but he didn't think it was wolves or coyotes. And then we have this tradition in my family where we have what's called Thanksmas. So all of us spend the actual Thanksgiving and Christmas with our own little families, and then we all get together for a big one in between. And he was hosting it that year, and so he had kind of a designated smoking area for everybody out on the back deck behind the house. So he got up on the Saturday morning, and a bunch of people were already there and had stayed the night with him, but he was the only one up, and he went out there to have a cigarette. And when he noticed something moving up in the pasture, and when he looked up, it was a Bigfoot. And he said it basically moved across his field of vision, which was the house has landscaping and trees and stuff. So there's just like a little area where you can kind of look off the deck and see across to that pasture. And it just crossed his field of vision. It crossed from the right and went to the left. And it was far enough away that he couldn't see details on the face. But the one thing that was memorable about what he said was that it wasn't in a hurry, but it was fast. He said it looked like it was just having a leisurely walk going from point A to B, but the speed of it was incredibly fast for how relaxed and nonchalant the thing was.
Yeah, that's
Like it was on.
terrifying.
So then what he did was while he saw it, he kind of was trying to get a grasp of perspective, and there's some trees and stuff in that field. And after this was all over, next day or two, he went up there and he figures it was probably 8 or 9 feet tall.
Yeah, that's really tall. Did he
Right.
say if it was on all fours or walking bipedal?
Walking upright, and very dark, not quite black, but almost.
Yeah. Okay.
And it happened on a sunny, clear day. It was full light outside and everything like that. So it went from his right to the left. So when this happened, he's got a house full of kids, house full of adults. Everybody's there, for this big Thanksmas meal that's going to happen. And then other people started to arrive, as the morning went on. And then my sister went out there to have a smoke with a child that was there, 9 years old. And they both saw it on the same day. And David had not told them that he had seen anything. Like he was still processing the whole experience, right? And he's got this house full of guests and stuff. He didn't say anything. And my sister bursts in and says, "You're not going to believe what we just saw out there." And the thing, it was almost exactly the same experience, except this time it was going the other direction, walked straight across her field of vision from the left to the right, same way. So then it was at that point that David, I shouldn't have said his name. It was at that point that my nephew um, came out with what he had seen that morning, you know. So that was really, really freaky.
Hmm. And it
And
was the
then,
same description?
yeah, just really, really dark, too far away to see details on a face. My sister said that the face looked like it was a face, like it didn't have a fur on it. It was a different color.
Yeah. And that sounds
But
like an
no,
extremely active area. When you see them during the day, that means that they're out and about. There's more than one. The whole clan's probably around and they're not afraid
yeah,
to be seen.
yeah. And the other thing that I wonder about too is knowing the area like I do, there's a little pond, which, there's springs and stuff all over the place, but I just wonder if the water source was something that they were walking toward away. I don't know.
Hmm. The direction that they described, was it like paralleling a creek, a drainage, a river? Did it look like it was heading to the Buffalo River?
No, it was paralleling a road.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
And
Maybe.
the area where it was walking was a long developed cattle pasture that has those trees in the middle that are just huge and reach far out, because they've been left there. They don't go straight up like the trees in the forest. And there's old, massive, massive trees there. So it's kind of like a little bit of brush here and then pasture and then a couple of trees and then pasture, so it's not like there's a lot of cover or anything, but it was walking parallel to the road.
Okay. Do you know roughly what time of day these encounters happened?
My nephew, it would have been probably 8 o'clock in the morning. And my sister, it was before 2 p.m., right around then.
Okay. And do you know the time of year? Was it summer, fall, winter?
It was between Thanksgiving and Christmas, but I can't remember the date.
Okay. And what else happened after that encounter on this land?
Well, all right, I told you about a little road that I mentioned. There's a little road that goes from that area that goes down quite steeply. It's actually, I took my van down it, and I was really sorry that I had when I got about halfway down, but there was no going back because you really do need like a four-wheeler or an ATV, really. And I guess it would have been the spring following that experience that my husband and I went to ride horses at a friend's place, and we were invited to stay there camping as long as we wanted to. So we went down there, we spent the weekend with our friends and camped out. And at that point, there were several people there. Um, it was kind of pretty active, and we were all riding all over the place and stuff. And then we had like a big group meal in the evening time around the fire and stuff. It was really, really nice. And so most everyone left, but we had been told that we could stay there another night or two if we wanted to. Nobody was going to be there. And so we decided to stay there by ourselves. And I remember having, you know, we were by ourselves, and the car was parked nearby where the fire was and all of that, and we had our tent and stuff, and it was just lovely, really, really, really quiet, and it's so remote. You just can't hear anything but the woods at all. And I just remember feeling like we're kind of in some sort of like magical dome, out there by ourselves. It was just beautiful. And then I got this crazy thought. It was like, starting to get dark. And I got this crazy thought. I was like, man, whatever lives in the woods around here is not expecting anybody to be here right now. Like, should I be worried? Should I be watchful? Should I be extra careful? But there were two horses penned very close to where our campsite was, and my dog was with us. And I thought, you know what? Like, all I need to do is just watch these animals. They're going to let me know if something weird's going on. Because in my mind, I was saying, oh, what if a bear comes up here or something? But looking back on it, I feel like that thought came came from someplace else than my head. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like something was telling me, like, this is annoying. You shouldn't be here. So I didn't say anything to my husband or whatever. We were just sitting around. Dog was relaxed, horses were relaxed, all of that, and then we heard a frickin' wood knock. I mean, plain as day. The horses didn't alert or react, but my dog did. And all he did was just lift his head and focus in the direction that it came. And my husband said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah." So we just sat there really, really, really quiet. Nothing else happened. And eventually we started chatting again. And as soon as we started chatting again, it happened again. At that point, I was like, we got to shut our mouth. We got to just shut our mouth. I feel like we should just go ahead and go to bed. And again, why wouldn't my first thought be pack up and get out? It was more, I felt like it just wanted us out of the way. So then some time passes, we start chatting again, and we're gathering up our stuff, to go to bed and everything like that. And we sat down to smoke a cigarette in front of the fire. And as soon as we sat down, we heard a rock hit the road up above us on the hill. And it sounded like, oh my gosh, like a major league baseball pitcher had hurled something. It hit with force. Like, I wouldn't doubt that the rock may have splintered and cracked. It hit with force. And it was not an armadillo accidentally rolling a rock down the hill, or a raccoon, or anything like that. It was a pointed statement, and that's how it felt, and I'll stand by that. And I said to my husband, "It's time for us to go to bed." And he went. We didn't have any sidearms or anything like that with us, but he went to get the axe, and he was gonna, sleep with the axe next to him. And I said, "Just put it back." I said, "It sends the wrong impression, and if whatever that is wants to get us, that axe is going to do us no good anyway." I said, "Let's just go to bed. It's going to be fine. Just wants us out of here." And we went to bed and went to sleep and woke up the next morning and left.
Yeah,
So
that is terrifying. It sounds like they were warning you guys and possibly trying to drive you out of the area.
that's the impression that I had from the very beginning of the whole thing. I felt like we were being watched, and that whatever it was waiting for everybody to go. And hey, they didn't all go. There's still somebody down there, dang it. And it wanted us out of there, right?
Yeah, because you hear stories where people get chased out of the woods, and in
Yeah,
this instance, they were letting you guys know that, hey, we're in here too. And it's kind of the same way whenever people are camping and somebody else is like walking down the trail, you kind of just start talking so they can hear you, like, hey, we're here, don't come
yeah,
this way.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it was just, I don't know, the whole evening, that evening felt just different, as soon as we were the only ones there. I can't explain. It wasn't that I was fearful, but I just felt like, okay, reasonable caution. If we're here and everything in the woods doesn't expect us to be here, like, need to watch out, you know? I don't know, but it was no doubt in my mind. I'm absolutely certain that was. And that place, as the crow flies, is about 1.5 miles from where my nephew and my sister had their sighting.
Yeah, so
Not,
it
I
was
mean, just,
probably the same creatures then.
yeah, hop, skip, and a jump. I mean,
Hmm.
and
And
what's crazy too is that on that road that goes between the cemetery and my friend's house, it's such a nobody really uses that road for anything. It's not a viable option for point A to point B. It's mostly ATVers, hunters, stuff like that. And the vegetation down in there is old growth. It's old growth vegetation. So it looks different than what you see just piddling around on the back roads. Like huge, huge, huge beech trees, mountain magnolias everywhere. Like, it's like a little microcosm Jurassic Park type situation. Like, there's a canopy there and everything.
yeah, Sasquatch like to utilize natural forest, and they
Hmm.
typically don't like to be in areas that have been logged.
Right?
Hmm.
That's interesting. Because most of Newton County was heavily logged in the 1930s, almost clear cut. But there were a few pockets like this one where it wasn't. And it's just incredible. Beautiful, beautiful place. And there's springs running out of the side of the road, across the road, and little trickles of cold water coming out everywhere. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds like Sasquatch habitat to me. They like big
Hmm.
pine trees, large oak trees, springs, caves, rivers, spring-fed
Hmm.
creeks. So if you got all that and, large woods around, that's a recipe for
Yeah,
Sasquatch.
yeah, and tons of deer, tons and tons and tons of
Hmm.
deer.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you heard
so
any stories about this cemetery possibly being haunted? Anything strange regarding that area?
I don't recall. I mean, we visited there all the time. all the little cemeteries that, my mom knows where every one of them are. And when I was younger, we used to routinely go and visit them and take pictures and stuff like that. I don't remember hearing any stories about that one, but it's very, very old. Very old.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed a lot of times where there's Bigfoot activity in these large woods, there's like a random cemetery in the middle. For some reason, there's Sasquatch encounters and experiences around those areas. I don't know if there's a
Mm,
connection, but it could just be a coincidence.
right. Yeah. And plus the fact that, I mean, a lot of little rural areas like that, they do have little cemeteries sort of scattered around everywhere. I know it's like that in Newton County,
Yeah.
that are basically just kind of disappearing into the forest now because they're not maintained. A lot of them aren't.
Yeah,
Um,
it's hard to say if there's a connection. You'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, these things follow the power lines, the waterways. They're in big woods," but in all these areas, that's all there is power lines, creeks, rivers
yeah,
all over the place.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could probably cross the country just using power line cutovers.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anything
Yeah.
else happen with Bigfoot in this area?
Um, I not enough for me to relate any sort of specific stories,
Hmm.
but I do know that the few people that I know that live around there are believers. They always say, "Well, my grandpa said this or my dad said that." There's another interesting thing that I noticed though, um, and then I researched it, and I think there's something to it. There is a story out whenever my grandpa and my dad were younger that there was a gorilla that had escaped from the zoo and that everyone had seen it. And then my father-in-law said the same thing, and he's from Ava, that back whenever he was younger, this is people were running into this, and my dad, related stories that people had seen stuff like that. And he actually would mention that when we would talk about grandpa's story about seeing the creature by his smokehouse. That, oh, it was probably they were talking about gorillas that escaped from the zoos and stuff like that. But it, so I think, and then if you research it, there seems to be at around that time, it would have been in like the 1940s. There's a bunch of newspaper articles that talk about people running into gorillas that escaped from zoos, but they call it gorilla or wild man.
Yeah, that sounds like Bigfoot. Yeah.
Definitely, but it just sounds like one of those things where somebody sees something and then it does get talked about, but the thing that gets repeated is kind of erroneous.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe that's like the skeptical explanation for people. It must be a gorilla that escaped the zoo. That has to be what it is.
Which for this area, like from Ava down to here, um, my husband's dad used to say that that had a canopy in it that you could ride from Springfield to Alpena, Arkansas, without ever having to duck your head on a horse because it had such a canopy. And there's no zoos anywhere near here. I mean, I think the train line stopped running and it just doesn't make sense. What zoo? I mean, he would have had to travel. The poor gorilla would have had to travel a pretty long way to end up there.
Hmm. Yeah, it'd be a cold
Mhm.
winter for a gorilla.
Yeah.
Okay. So, have you ever had a UFO encounter before?
Well, see, that's kind of the reason that I reached out to you. I just feel like there are certain people that kind of just end up seeing a bunch of stuff. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's because we are singled out and being shown this stuff, or if it's that we have a sensitivity to noticing things that other people don't. I don't know. But since I was a kid, there was a really terrifying experience that happened to me. We were renting a house close to my grandfather's old house, actually. And let me think who was there. I would have been about 9. My niece would have been about 6. There was an 18-month-old, my sister's son, my sister, my mother. So a fair amount of people in the house. We were all asleep, and I remember I woke up, and my first thought was that there were cops outside the house. And what the heck? Because again, it was still a pretty remote little place, a little tiny winding dirt road with nobody nearby. And I realized that I could move my eyes, and that's all. I was lying on my side, and I could see lights on the bedroom wall coming in from the window where the parking places are in relation to that house. I just thought it was a cop car that had its lights on, but then I couldn't move. And I could move my eyes, and my niece was sleeping in the bed with me, and I could see her, and I could see that her eyes were open and that she wasn't moving either. And then I realized, why are the lights green and purple and blue and orange? It didn't seem like a cop car. And then I became very afraid. I didn't know if I was dreaming. I kept moving my eyes, trying to move my hands, trying to move my head. I was just frozen there in that position. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And I jumped up. My niece jumped up and she began to cry. We went out into the hallway, and everybody else had had the exact same experience. The whole house.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And my sister with her 18-month-old, and maybe this is just mama bear hormones or whatever, but she said she felt very, very strongly that they were looking at her son and were wanting to take him, and she couldn't move. She was frozen. So
Yeah.
that happened. And then, we all had the exact same experience, different ages, everything. And I guess a couple years after that, we were driving toward Branson, Missouri on 65. And my mom pointed out that there was an object in the sky that was following our car. And it did. It followed us all the way from south of Jasper, all the way up to Branson. And then when we went into the city, we lost sight of it and everything. My mom was working really hard to not scare me. She thought I had been asleep in the back seat, and she was talking to her friend that was in the front seat with her, but I heard them talking, and then I saw it, and it was hanging there in the sky, just following us. Just a light, a white light.
Yeah, I've heard similar encounters from people when they're driving. Um, I wanted to go back to the encounter where you saw the lights outside and
Yeah.
you couldn't move. Have
Hmm.
you ever heard my alien encounter?
No.
Okay. Well, me and a buddy went out to Bourbon, Missouri. There was like a small party, and I was in high school back then. I didn't.
Where's Bourbon? Where's
Bourbon,
Bourbon?
Bourbon is like west of Sullivan, Missouri, in between Sullivan and Rolla, Missouri.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a small little town, but I didn't drink very much that night. I had like maybe a beer or two. And whenever I got back home, it was like 2 in the morning. Everything was normal. I laid down in bed, went to sleep, and I woke up around 3 in the morning. And whenever I woke up, the only thing I could move were my eyeballs. I could move, like I could breathe, but I couldn't move like my limbs. I couldn't get up. And whenever I
Oh
looked
my
over,
gosh.
there was this gray alien just staring down at me. He had no expression on his face. It was like he was just, I don't know, looking into my soul. And once I saw him, I tried to break free. Like I tried to move, but I couldn't. And I remember the fan next to my bed. It was oscillating, but it was like in slow
Yeah.
motion, like
Whoa.
hmm And finally, like I tried my hardest to get up, and finally I could sit up. When I looked over, the thing was gone. But it was, I don't know, a fairly long encounter, anywhere from like, I don't know, like 8 to 10 seconds. But I know a lot of people talk about sleep paralysis, but I was fully aware of everything that was going on. Like it was real. It wasn't a dream state. I
It
was.
was, that's the thing. Like looking back at it, I woke up
Mm-hmm.
and then saw this happening. And then whenever it was over, I didn't wake up. I just got up. I wasn't asleep.
Yeah.
And Miguel, that's freaky that you had a similar thing happen.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
is really, really freaky.
Yeah, and it blows my mind because most people never have a Bigfoot encounter, never experience the paranormal, never see a UFO, but then there's certain people that see everything. They have seen a Bigfoot or have experienced the activity, they've had an alien encounter and paranormal experiences. Like, why do certain people experience the trifecta and other people never have anything happen in their life? I feel like there's a connection there, but at the same time, everything was years apart, so I can't say, oh, this alien encounter is connected to Bigfoot.
Right.
But there
Right.
is like the breeding program. People talk about, I don't know, I don't want to say it, but like demonic activity or, there's all kinds of theories out there, so it's really hard to say.
The thought that I have on it is this: when I think about, certain people seeing a lot of things, and people like that tend to they tell their stories and they get ridiculed, so they just stop telling their stories, and then it makes it really hard to sort of find someone to talk to about these things, and without having their opinion get so changed of you that they don't want to hang out with you anymore. But I really do feel like monks in Tibet with meditation, they experience transcendental lifting of the veil all the time. People have experiences where they sort of, I think it's maybe that certain people are using parts of their brain that are available to everybody, but not everybody necessarily develops it. And maybe there's a set of circumstances or life situations or genetic predisposition, with these people. I don't know, but I feel like there's certain people that notice things, you know, that if it's there, they're going to notice it. And
hmm
I also do think that there might be some truth to, well, if you notice it, maybe they realize that you notice it and then you become special.
Yeah, that very well could be. Maybe certain people use more of their brain than others in a
Yeah,
different way.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
wonder how many people that have reported their Bigfoot encounters keep this a secret. They're willing to talk about the encounter because it's something physical that they saw. A lot of people are interested in knowing about Bigfoot, but when they think about, oh, this alien thing that I had happen or the paranormal, I'm going to keep that a secret so
Right,
people don't think I'm
right.
crazy.
Well, then the other thing that happened was not long after that. I was still a kid. My niece, same deal. Like every time I spent the night with my sister, my niece and I had to share a bed. And she's 3 years younger than me, and I would have been maybe 10, you know. And we both woke up and couldn't move. But this time it felt more like we were too scared to move, because in the corner of the room, the door was shut. And in the corner where the door met the wall, there was this golden coalescing thing happening on the floor. And it started to build up. And the best thing I could say is kind of like that beam me up Scotty sort of look, where it's like a column of this glowing golden light. And as it came up from the floor, I could see that it was hollow and that something was forming inside it that was man shaped. I could see the shoulders, the head, but it also was golden and glowing. And my niece beside me was trying to yell, and it was coming out like, we were just so terrified. And then she finally let out this scream, "Mom!" And it just bloop, blinked into the floor. and went away. And my sister came bursting into the room, and both of us were crying and scared. And I never, ever slept at that house again. I couldn't, I was too scared.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine the fear that you felt whenever you encountered that.
And what's interesting about that is that, this has been, I'm in my 50s, so it's been quite a while ago. And I was at a family gathering recently, and I told that story. And my niece that had been in the bed with me at the time, and she would have only been 5 or 6, she just listened to me, and I looked over and she was like crying, just tears slipping down her face. And she goes, I thought it was a dream. I thought it was a dream.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's frightening for sure. And
Hmm.
I believe you when you talk about these encounters and experiences. And I know a lot of people listening, they came here for Bigfoot and maybe they think, I don't believe in all of that. And I just think
But it's
Bigfoot
just,
exists. But, like, what if this happened to your daughter? What if this happened to your husband or wife and they have nobody to talk to? Like, this very well
yeah.
could happen to them. And it is traumatic. So it's important
Well, I
to
mean,
listen to other
I,
people.
I thought at that point, I seriously formed the conclusion that they might take me away. I was really, really scared. That's the feeling that I had. And after hearing my one sister talk about, feeling like they were looking at her little boy, I mean, it was really, really scary.
Hmm.
Really scary.
And what the encounter that I told you about, the terrifying part is what I think about is how many times have they taken me away, and possibly I don't even know about it because
You
if you
know,
listen to abduction stories, this stuff happens throughout their life, and it's not until they get older or go through this regression hypnosis that they find out they've been taken and they had no idea about it.
it really, really makes you wonder. It
Hmm.
really does.
Yeah, like
And
how many
I,
times have they showed up in the night and you had no idea about it? This is the time that you woke up and you were aware that something was off, but how long have they
right,
been doing that?
right. Well, I'll tell you, the last thing that happened was actually super, super freaky. And we were up, we were living in Ava for a couple of years, Ava, Missouri. And I mean, way, 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 way out in the middle of nowhere. And one night I went outside and I looked up and I'm like, why is Venus twinkling? Like, it was Venus, but it looked for all the world like it was twinkling or swirling or something. And called my husband out, called our daughter out. We're looking up and we can all see it. And then I pulled out my phone and zoomed way, way in and tried to stand as still as I could. It was swirling. It looked like a spiral. And not only that, but it would swirl and then light would like poof off the edge of it in pulses. And every once in a while, there would be a really big one. And I had the strong feeling that they knew I was there and they knew I was looking and that they were doing something to let me know that, because the way it would pulse, pulse, and then this big golden stuff come off the end. I have video of it. I have 5 or 6 videos from that night and from the next night that it was doing it. And I actually contacted someone in MUFON about it. And they came down the next night and it wasn't doing it. And they took my videos and they had them analyzed up, down, and sideways. I was afraid that it was like an autofocus, something with the autofocus was causing it to look like that, or something with my phone's camera was causing this effect. But they took them and they looked at them and looked at them and looked at them. She said she had 14 different tech people try to figure out what it could be, and nobody knew. So when they came down, it wasn't doing it.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny how that works.
right. And if you want those videos, I'll gladly send them to you. It's pretty freaky.
Yeah, if you
It's
can
pretty.
send them to me on Facebook, email, or share a
I will
link.
for sure.
Okay.
I will for sure.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention that Ava, Missouri is a hot spot for Bigfoot activity. There's all kinds of researchers that go there and people that have had encounters and experiences there.
Well, I tell you, it's an ideal spot. There's places around there, like if you go on the highway from like Good Hope to Bradleyville, is that 76? Good Hope to Forsyth, sorry. It's like Highway 76. All up and down there is just so wild around the river bottoms. It's just really, really, really. It would be easy for something to be living there and nobody to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you ever had paranormal experiences as far as seeing like shadow people, ghosts, disembodied voices, anything like that?
I get corner of my eye things happening. I don't know how else to explain it. I joke with my husband, I'm like, oh, it's the little people again, you know, because I do get corner of my eye stuff all the time, especially in certain places on our property here. Um, but the paranormal, I would have to say that between my family members, there seems to be some sort of psychic connection. And I think a lot of siblings kind of have this where maybe they're living far apart and the person will call right exactly when you need them to call or something. And that happens to us all the time. But there's things like me having to have an emergency tonsillectomy when I was 4, and my adult sister leaving work in a panic with nobody having told her anything and showing up where I was without anybody calling her or knowing. And that she had a dream the night before where I came running out of the house. She came to the house in the dream, and I came running out of the house and I said, "Sissy, sissy, they cut my throat." And when she showed up after the surgery and everything, I ran out of the house. I said, "Sissy, sissy, they cut my throat." So it's all kinds of stuff like that that happens in our family. And I think I would consider that somewhat paranormal, but it kind of goes along with my whole theory about how maybe there's a genetic predisposition to it. Maybe some life circumstance has allowed us to tap into something that maybe not everybody necessarily taps in their lifetime. I don't know. But my husband, he'll straight up say, I think y'all are witchy, and we're not. I mean, no, you know, but it's just spooky stuff happens like that all the time with us.
Yeah, that is interesting. And what are
I've
you?
seen, I've, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, what's your theory regarding Bigfoot? What do you think it is? Where do you think they came from?
Well, based on what I know about research that has been done lately, they've proven that the out of Africa theory is defunct. They've got ample evidence that there were multiple species of humanoid hominid that were living on the earth at the same time that they didn't think uh, lived at the same time. Things like Homo erectus, uh, what's the one, the Hobbit one, Floriensis, or however you say it. Neanderthals, obviously, that they actually shared space with each other on the earth. And if you go and you look all this stuff up, you'll see what I mean. But mainstream science is, I think they're having sort of cognitive dissonance because everything they thought they knew was true is now kind of turning out not to be true. So there's a reluctance to sort of be open and talkative about this kind of stuff. I think that Bigfoot may be relic hominids. I do get the feeling that they're probably some kind of people. Um, it could be that they are a great ape that we don't know about. That's my second theory. Um, I don't, I can't wrap my mind around the theories about, alternate dimensions and things like that because I just haven't really investigated it or given it that much thought. But I know there's a lot of people that feel that way, and who am I to say? I mean, there's a lot of things on this earth that we don't know, and that's getting proven to us faster and faster and faster as time goes by. And who knows? You know, who knows? But I do think they're probably some kind of people.
Yeah, very well
I also
said.
I also do believe in the research that was done on the DNA by Melba. Is it Ketchum? Melba Ketchum,
Hmm.
where she sent in to several different labs, and they kept returning it that it was contaminated, that the sample wasn't good, and the reason that they thought it was contaminated was because it contained a human DNA, which they felt had was because of people handling it and contaminating the sample. But I think there's got to be some sort of interbreeding something. And I base that not only on Melba Ketchum's research, but all of the oral history about infants being stolen, women being stolen. You know, um, there's a lot out there to make you think, you know, maybe. And honestly, you know, a gorilla and a chimp and a human and an orangutan are less genetically separate than a horse and a donkey. And I have no doubt that there probably wouldn't be a problem with producing offspring, which is sick to think about. But I mean, realistically, you know,
Yeah. And I agree with the out of Africa theory. It seems like in Africa, with like the Egyptian pyramids, they were extremely advanced, and still to this day, they can't figure out how they built the pyramids and how they carried those stones from like 800 miles away. And there's
I mean,
just,
once you start going down these rabbit holes, it's like, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Like advanced civilization occurring on the Earth previously, maybe. You know, when I look at the pyramids and when I look at all these, sites where you think to yourself, well, Mount Rushmore, it took 14 years and with modern equipment to build Mount Rushmore. And then you see pictures of like places in Cambodia or the pyramids or, whatever that you're like, okay, like what? you know, if they didn't have modern equipment, it must have taken them, generations to finish that. But I don't think it did. I don't think it did. So, like I said, I think there's a lot of things under the heavens that we may find out about it in our lifetime. I hope so. I'm really curious, but maybe we won't.
yeah, me too. And I do feel like it'll be a never ending rabbit hole of confusion, but hopefully we find out the truth.
Yeah, that would be nice. And I support, I think that's why I called you because I feel like you have kind of the same attitude about that I do. And that means a lot to me. So,
Yeah, it means a lot to me that you contacted me and that you trust me, and I don't know, you had positive thoughts about me, so that really means a lot, and I appreciate that.
hey, no problem. I'm glad to have somebody to talk to about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I started the
Hmm.
channel too, is to have somebody to talk to, because when you have to live with this and you think about it constantly over and over and you can't open up with anybody, or if you do, they laugh at you, it's really hard. So starting this channel was like a therapy for me.
I understand that. Like I'm 100% addicted to researching this. YouTube is a big part of it for me. Um, and it's just I feel lately like I'm at about maximum saturation though. Like it's so much is coming out that my brain is just like, maybe we ought to get interested in something else.
Hmm.
But it's really nice to be able to talk to someone instead of just um, consuming the media about it. It would be nice if people would feel more free to have in-depth conversations about things and avoid small talk and actually be interested and participate and ask questions and just really listen. you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I'm an upstanding citizen and a smart person and a credible person, and I don't have any motivation. I'm not trying to get attention. It's just crazy. These things that I've experienced and heard about. And anyway, I would just encourage anybody that's listening to this, like, don't be afraid to talk about this stuff. It's the same as talking about the latest space station or, some new discovery that was made. There's credible, absolutely credible evidence, and absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And that's one thing that people should be aware of. I mean, just because everything that goes to the Smithsonian goes there to die and disappear, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. There's evidence.
Hmm.
And every, I mean, there's hoaxes out there. And one thing I don't understand, what motivates a person to make a hoax? Like, is it attention? Why do people do this? And
Yeah.
why do people get into how do you say that? Where
Pareidolia.
they look,
Yeah.
yeah, where they look at the shadows in the pictures. Like, what is that?
Yeah, I don't
I,
understand that either, and it blows my mind that people see things out of blurry photos, but I don't know. I try not to ridicule them.
it's frustrating though, because
It,
you are trying to have a serious discourse online,
mm,
especially.
yeah.
It's going to be 95% people like that, and maybe 1% of people that are there to seriously learn something. And of those 1%, very few actually say anything
Hmm.
or talk
It
about it,
definitely sets the research back, and I mean, they got the patty footage like in the 60s, so now people in the 2020s are getting these blurry photos that don't show anything. It's like we're moving backwards, and here
Yeah.
recently I've been seeing this post all over Facebook that mainstream scientists have concluded that all these Bigfoot sightings are just upright walking bears. I'm like, oh, okay. I wanted to smash my phone whenever I seen that.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And the thing is, if that's what gets on the news, that's what people believe, you know.
Hmm.
Oh, it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
What do you think about the portal stuff? What do you think about the, interdimensional being side of things? I mean, in your experience, what's your opinion on it?
Well, I certainly believe in it just because of the paranormal experiences I've had, invisible things moving, objects around in my house. Whenever I was having Bigfoot activity on the property and the clan was present, I would see like these orbs floating through the woods. I've had,
Oh,
I've had,
gosh, that's another thing.
uh,
Keep going, keep going.
I've had experiences where I'd be in these Bigfoot areas doing research, following up with people's eyesight and encounters, and it'd be winter time and you could hear a heavy lumberjack bipedally walking in the woods 40 yards in the woods during the winter without any foliage on the trees. I mean, you could
And
see.
not see it.
No, yeah, you can't see it, and it's only 40 yards away, and you can see at least 80 yards down into the holler, and it's just right there. And that happened multiple times, and it,
That's wild.
yeah, it makes me think that there are other dimensions, and I mean,
Well,
just like the
what do you think
UFOs,
about,
they come out of nowhere and they go into nowhere. I don't know how to explain it.
what I think is really exciting? I recently learned that, the whole thing where people say, well, all the Bigfoot pictures are blurry, but what if that's because Bigfoot's blurry? You know,
Hmm.
um, the research that they've done recently, I believe it was at Cornell, paid for through those people, but they did research on tigers, and tigers do use a subsonic blast to stun prey. They've definitively proven that.
Mountain lions
And that
too.
I think that mountain lions too.
Hmm.
I think that definitely could be something at play with Bigfoot, with the amount of people that experience this sort of motionless dread, or everything going quiet in the woods, and just all of a sudden being filled with dread. I mean, I've read articles about, there was an experiment where they had three identical houses, identically furnished, and they brought people in that thought they were just going to give an opinion on each house. And in one of the houses, they played the dread frequency that isn't able to be heard, but every single person in those studies noticed it.
Yeah.
They would give their impression of the houses, and they all noticed not a good feeling, or they had negative things to say about the house that was had the that noise being broadcast, but the houses were exactly alike. So I don't know. I think there might be something to that. I think there might be something to this whole subsonic communication and uses of it to stun prey or to um, al- alleviate threats, you know, that may be around. I know elephants do it. Now they
Hmm.
know tigers do it. You said mountain lions. I think there's probably something to that.
Yeah, I think so too. The main thing that
Hmm.
makes me believe in the portals is, well, obviously that alien encounter I told you about. Whenever I got up, it was gone. But the
Yeah.
juvenile Bigfoot that I seen on my property, I saw him scurry on all fours behind an oak tree, and he slowly hid behind the oak tree. And I thought, oh, whatever this is, it's gone now. But the thing stepped
Mm.
out, and he was looking to its left. I was to its right, and he panned around slowly, and he saw me. His eyes shot open, and you could see the fear in his eyes. He looked like he just saw a demon looking at me. And he shot down behind the oak tree, and he was gone. It wasn't like a deer taking off where you hear like all kinds of
Right.
commotion. Once he hid behind
Hmm.
that oak tree, he was gone. He was only 40 yards away. So it's like he just like pulled this Houdini move. And
Like disapparated.
yeah. I mean, he was right there, and he never popped out again. I never heard him run away. I was looking to the left, to the right of the tree, and it's just like everything went silent after he hid behind the tree. It's like, how is that
That's
possible?
crazy.
Hmm.
That's insane. Well, I got excited when you were talking about orbs before because I forgot to tell you I did see an orb in Ava, in the outskirts of Ava, and actually it was in Good Hope, which is also where I had the encounter with Venus twinkling at me. Um, we were coming across a little low water bridge, and I just looked over to my right, and what I thought at first it was someone walking with a flashlight, but then immediately I could tell it probably wasn't because it was moving, but it wasn't moving as a flashlight would move if someone were walking with it. It was a smooth descent down the hill. We got back to the house, and I said, "I'm gonna have to look at that hill tomorrow because I think somebody was walking down that hill. I don't know though." And then my husband told me that many people have seen orbs in that exact spot for many, many, many years.
Yeah, that is interesting because whenever I was having Bigfoot activity here that evening, it was during the summertime, I heard three distinct whistles, like somebody was spying on me, like a cattle whistle, really loud. And it was one after another. I went back up there an hour later, and there was these two orange orbs floating down the ridge. And
That's wild.
yeah, that's what makes me think there are portals and other dimensions. If you listen to paranormal researchers, they say like when entities manifest, it takes a lot of energy. They'll drain your batteries, they'll drain like the power from the house, and I feel like the orbs are energy, and they possibly are the portals. And I've personally taken reports from genuine people that have claimed to see these orbs around Bigfoot or see like creatures step out of the orbs. So I think that's what the orbs are. It's the portals opening, which
I'm
takes a
gonna
lot
have
of
to do
energy.
some more reading
Hmm.
and listen to some people talk about it because, like I said, that's the one area of this whole, sort of area of interest that I haven't really done a whole lot of investigating about. You know, um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
agree. And there's definitely
Hmm.
something deeper going on other than, the government not wanting to tell us about it because it'll affect the logging industry. They're not wanting to
Yeah.
tell us what they truly are because they don't want us to know what's going on behind the scenes. There's something bigger than just logging and a lot of money.
Hmm. But I know that whenever the government came out and announced that, isn't it funny how they rebranded UFOs as something else?
Yeah,
What do they call
UAPs.
it? Like, I'd like to know the reason for that. I think that seems deliberate to me, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um,
They're
but
UFOs.
when they did, yeah, right. So when they came out with that, I remember bursting into laughter every time we talk about that stuff, and I'd be like, "You guys owe me a big apology, okay?" Because I've been saying it all this time, and if they'll hold that from you from time immemorial, come on, why are they doing this with Bigfoot? I don't know. I'd like to know the reasoning behind that.
Yeah. Well, when the government comes out with their little evidence of Bigfoot, they might change the name.
Yeah, and they might also change the narrative a little bit.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a hominid that deserves the same respect as people, but they might label it an animal and, maybe even encourage people to be careful or get rid of it. I don't know. I really wish I knew the motivation behind the secrecy because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that hard evidence is out there and it has hit the desks of the people that are supposed to be studying it and public servants, you know, for disseminating knowledge. And for some reason, it all goes away.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
With Bigfoot, it's about we the people, and apparently it's not so much about that anymore. People want somebody with a suit and tie that wears makeup to tell them the truth about it, and
hmm
it doesn't matter about all the people that are speaking up
yeah,
about this. And that's the
yeah,
sad part.
and I mean, people can say all the time, "Oh, it's anecdotal evidence, anecdotal evidence." Sorry, if thousands of people have this anecdotal evidence, it shouldn't be ignored. It's ridiculous to ignore it or poo-poo it in that way. And I think it's really, really ridiculous whenever scientists do that. Like they're the only ones that could possibly confirm or deny the existence of this thing. I believe my grandpa. I believe what happened to me. I believe m- most of the stories that I hear on YouTube and other people telling me. I believe that people are genuine, and there's hoaxes out there, no doubt about it. But there's a lot more that don't seem like a hoax.
Yeah, and a lot of people just say, "Oh, it's just a bunch of rednecks making up stories," but there's been all kinds of government officials that have talked about this, police officers, lawyers, and it's not just people from out in the woods, like it's really happening.
Yeah, I know. I know someone very high up in rank in the military, um, very well respected man, and he had an encounter where he saw one coming out of a deer stand, like one of those little buildings, on stilts in somebody's field. That he saw one coming out of it, and I mean, this guy's got a security clearance, and you know, I believe him. I believe him.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is
hmm
there anything else you'd like to add to the podcast? Anything else that you'd like to
No,
ask me?
I mean, I'm just, I'm gonna go surf through your videos with a more nitpicky eye now that we have some stuff in common here. I'm really, really interested to really watch all of your stuff, and I so appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for taking me seriously and listening and having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you for reaching out to me and being a guest on the show. And I believe you 110%.
Thanks. Well, keep up the good work, man, and watch out for them Bigfoots.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you ever experience or encounter anything else, feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to hear about it.
And the offer is on the table if you ever want more information or want to do some research in the area that I told you about. I think it would be a great idea. I'd be willing to help you out. I'd probably even go over there, you know, um, as long as it's not too big of a hike. I got a bad knee, but I think that it would be worthy to go to the spot that I had the most recent encounter. I think that that would probably be very, very, very good possibility of, finding something.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And if I'm ever down by the Buffalo River in Arkansas, I'll contact you and we can get together and go to this area that you had those experiences at.
Sounds good.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much for your effort and for telling the truth about what you experienced.
Oh, thank you so much, Miguel. It's nice talking to you.
All right, Lisa, thank you once again for sharing the encounters and experiences that have taken place around the property. And Arkansas is a hot area for Bigfoot. There has been a lot of activity reported from the Ozarks and especially the Buffalo River. I feel like Bigfoot is an opportunistic and they scavenge from time to time, and people unknowingly gift these creatures by leaving food outside or in an area that they can get to. They are always watching someone and they will take advantage of anything they can get their hands on, so you never know if Bigfoot is watching you. Bigfoot is extremely intelligent and their senses are out of this world. Although sometimes it doesn't make sense that a creature like this can remain undetected for so long, but yet they go through trash cans and they're scraping dead dogs off the highway. They are very, very advanced and there's a lot to learn about them. If you guys enjoyed this interview, please like and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the bell notification if you can. And if you have a Bigfoot encounter that you would like to share with me on the channel, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. But yeah, that's all we have for today, and I appreciate everyone for listening. And if you guys can, please support the channel in any way possible, and I appreciate everyone's help and support. God bless everyone. Take care, and be safe out there.